Hello, this is the other Josh with a quick note. We had a lot of technical difficulties here in the submarine where we record our podcast, so you may notice some mild changes in the audio quality, but I think you'll find the quality of the discussion is still consistently high. Thanks for listening.
Who am I today? A child looking for a home.
Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to Sacred and Messy, our seasonal exploration of our Lutheran faith and often messy lives. Whether you're listening at home or on the go, we're glad you're here, and welcome to the conversation. I'm Vicar Josh, joined by our super producer, the real OG, Josh WG. Say hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
When you see us around, let us know you've been tuning in, who you'd like to hear from, and what conversations you'd love to explore in the future. It's all sacred, and sometimes it gets a little messy. Today, we're talking with one of my favorite people, my friend Laura Preus. Laura, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much.
Tell us a little bit about how long you and your family have been at Emmanuel.
Yeah, actually, a very long time. My husband and I were married in 2007. We got married in this church, and have raised our children here. We have 14-year-old twins, Annabelle and Nathan. And I guess I joined when my brother Dave and his family, Carmenza and Daniel, they were members here. So I think in my 20s I had been exploring and dabbling. And we actually lived in our children's early lives. We lived across the street, and so we could just sort of like roll out of bed and make it to church. That was really great.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was just saying this morning on the way in, I was running a little behind, and I thought, this is why we want to live close to the church.
Yeah, right.
So tell us a little bit, Laura, what does faith mean to you?
Well, that's a pretty big question, isn't it? For me, faith is a sense of a loving presence in this world that is both really personal and expansive. So faith is a trust in God and a belief that God is doing good in this world. And I think faith is also our relationships with God and with each other is a really big part of faith as well.
How do you live that out just every day, like in your work? Can you tell us a little bit what you do daily? Or
Yeah, sure. I can talk about that definitely. So I'm in a field of public service, which I love being the idea of being a public servant. I work in a government agency related to natural resources and parks and trails management, and so we're out there trying to serve Minnesota and help our natural resources be well, help people get connected to the outdoors. And for me, that's just a real privilege to get to try to think about where do we live? How do we live in it? How do we enjoy it? How do we care for it? And so that's a little bit, that's sort of a broad answer, but without getting into the details of my work, that's I consider myself a public servant.
Public service brings with it a lot of joys and a lot of challenges, I bet.
It does.
Yeah. What are some of the more joyful things that you get to see or that you get to work on? What are some of the things that bring you joy?
Well, I love working with people. I think that when you are a public servant, a lot of times what happens is that people are driven by the mission. They believe in what they're trying to do. And so you are working with people who are really committed to trying to make something better for other people. In our case, it's something to do with trying to make Minnesota the best place that it can be. So that is inspiring and joyful. And also you get to help other people. For example, in my line of work, we get to help people get connected to the outdoors. And so if somebody can be outside, their day can be better because they've been enjoying a park or a trail or what have you. That is that's inspiring.
A lot of people, I think, experience God outside.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I think we've talked about this before, but I grew up in the southern Appalachian Mountains, just in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, and my family, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. The parks were always, it's right next door to us, so we spent a lot of time there. And as a young person, I began to experience God in sort of that expansiveness too.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned a little bit about helping people connect to the outdoors. So how does your faith inform how you help people get connected to the parks or whatever it might be doing?
Yeah, well, I guess in terms of how my faith informs that, my faith, I believe a lot in the goodness and the beauty of this world. And so wanting to care for it is an important thing. And I also believe that that's in the context of people living in it. And so I guess one, you could say a sense of stewardship is an important part of that. And then this other part of, we're all here living in it. And so how do we care for our environment? How do we care for each other? Are important things for me to think about in that. You mentioned growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. So I got to spend a lot of time in north central Minnesota growing up.
Okay.
And for me, that was really informing both my faith and my vocation, I think. Because as a kid running around, we would try to find frogs, where are the crayfish underneath the rocks in the lake. Dad would be out there, hauling some brush or planting some trees. And it was just a place where you could explore and you could see beauty and feel vibrant in it. And all those things for me informed a feeling of like, this is something good to care about. Other people should be able to be having a good time outdoors too, whether you have money or you don't have money or whoever you are. This is a good place where you can feel to be a healthy person. And then for me, I see it as God's beauty as well. Yeah. So there's a faith component. I've often felt more connected to God in nature. I think a lot of people feel that way. It brings with it a respect for the natural world.
So you mentioned spending time in north central Minnesota. It doesn't take people long with me to realize that I'm not from here. Where are some of your favorite places, maybe not just in north central Minnesota, but where are some of your favorite places in Minnesota to spend some time? Where do you think people might enjoy or get a real sense of God's presence and why?
Yeah. Well, that's such a challenging question. I knew one person who said, "Oh, it's always the last park I went to, or it's the next park I'm going to is my favorite." But in reality, I think that there's something where it can be anywhere. You can go outside your front yard and you can be gardening in your garden and you can feel connected to nature. The local park down the way, maybe you're going to a bigger regional park, or maybe you're going to the headwaters of the Mississippi, right, in Minnesota, or you're at a place in the vast expanse of Lake Superior, or you're up in the Boundary Waters, more farther into the wilderness. So I feel like it's sort of a progression there. And people can enter it wherever they want to, right? However they can fit it into their day. And this might actually be a good time to mention a sort of a cool website that I'm aware of that people can find a connection to the outdoors. It's a place where you could search up parks or trails that are near you, or you could search out a certain kind of activity you're interested, like maybe mountain biking, or you just want to have a picnic, or you can search it out. So if you Google Minnesota Great Outdoors, Googling Minnesota Great Outdoors, that'll send you to a website that'll allow you to search for parks and trails near you. So that's a fun thing that you could try. But really it's entering at your own pace. Some people don't want to sleep overnight outdoors. Other people are like, this is great.
Yeah.
So I think everybody can find a way to find themselves a little bit closer to nature and maybe a little bit closer to their spirituality as well.
Oh, that's funny. I love being outdoors, but as I've gotten older, my idea of roughing it has been like a Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
So I like to be out there. One thing I've noticed about Minnesota, we have a lot of wild spaces in Tennessee too. The mosquitoes here, and it's kind of a cliche, right?
Oh my gosh.
I've discovered the further north I have been, the bigger the mosquitoes get.
It can be brutal.
Oh boy. What's your?
But don't let it stop you.
No. What's your? Do you have a favorite park or a favorite place that you like to visit?
Like I mentioned, I grew up having a sense of place in a place called Cabacona Lake. And that's just where, I walk in the forest there next to the lake, and I feel really grounded. I feel at peace. I feel joy. But I find that in, many places. It can be anywhere, really. And I think a lot of people have their own special place, but it's also fun to explore new ones too.
It is.
Yeah.
My husband and I, we were engaged at Lebanon Hills it was Jensen Lake.
Wonderful.
For the first few years we were in Minnesota, the first couple of years, we somehow just randomly, and maybe it's Mike's schedule, but somehow we randomly ended up doing this hike around Jensen Lake on the same day for like 3 years in a row before we realized it.
Wow.
And so it has become a tradition for us now. And where that particular place doesn't only have just hold for us this sense of God's presence, but it also is that sense of community.
Yes.
I feel connected to something bigger too.
Something beyond yourself.
Yeah, you get that when you're out there.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that. Because I think most people might have a place where they feel a little more connected than usual, and getting back there can sometimes really help a person feel good about their day.
There have been days and times when it's been hot or the weather hasn't been great where we have felt like we're going to skip the hike this year, and then we don't. We say nope. We have been committed to this. We've done it now a lot of times now.
Mm-hmm.
Where we go, and going back to that place, it does have a way to just hits reset with the senses and everything you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. What advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to get reconnected with God or with nature?
Well, I think there's a personal thing and a community thing there. So just asking oneself, what can I do today to help build that connection to God or to my community? Yeah. It can look a lot of different ways. And so I think I'd just encourage them to go out and do that. Give it a go. It's gonna make you feel better in the end. I also wanted to say, you had asked earlier, Josh, about vocation and thinking about this in vocation. So I was thinking a little bit more broadly about that topic, if that's maybe something to talk about as well.
Please, yeah, I hope you will.
Because I've sort of landed up in this field because I was interested in the outdoors. I felt strongly about working with people and connecting people to the outdoors. But I didn't always know what that path was going to be, right? So I think we all sort of amble about for a period of times in our youth where we're like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go?
Some of us in our adulthood.
Yes, exactly. It took me a while as well. I think I was a graduate student for like years. I was actually. But in all seriousness, I think that the idea of our vocation and how we feel called to do something is an evolving one for all of us. It's not static.
Yep.
And I was thinking about in my youth how I really had no idea where I wanted to focus, and my folks always joked with me that I had the Preus curse, because we were always so interested in different things that it was hard for us to choose where we wanted to focus. But in any scenario, I remember being in high school and thinking about, well, what do I want to do? Where am I going to go? What's this going to look like? And at the time, as I was a senior and graduating, it so turned out my dad, I'm very lucky. My dad was a wonderful church leader and really inspired me and shaped me in so many ways. So in my high school, they asked him to give the baccalaureate service for our senior year. And I knew my dad to be an amazing pastor, so I wasn't worried about that, but I did find myself thinking like, gosh, this is my senior class. Like, what is my dad going to say to all of us when he's up there giving this sermon?
Yep.
But he had this wonderful sermon to give that I still remember. And he talked about Jesus washing the disciples' feet and told that story, and then talked about how this act of service to others and how any one of us, no matter what we were doing or going into, could find little ways to serve each other. And as a group of senior high school students, it was a great message. He's like, you could go into public service, you could be a business person in retail, a chef. It really doesn't matter. You can find ways to serve your neighbor. You can find your ways to make the day a little better place. And it was such a relief at that time, knowing like, whatever my vocation is, there's a way to connect to doing something good. And it was, I think, an empowering and a message that had us feeling good. And so I felt really good about that. And it was very touching. It was very touching. My senior classmates, everybody gave a gift, and they said, let's give a towel and a basin to the chapel as our senior gift. And it told me that connected with them as well, that they all felt like whatever your vocation is, you can find a way to serve each other in the world, and that meant a lot, and it stayed with me, Josh, too. I one of my favorite little sayings that I've had on a little card by my office is to affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts. And I think it's a Thoreau quote. And it reminds me to scale back this feeling that you have to solve the world in any one moment. That actually just a little something you can do each day. Be kind to your coworker. Figure out something good you can do. It can be little, but if you're doing something to affect the quality of the day, then your day is worth it.
I love that. I need to be better about remembering that. That's a little more...
It can be hard. That's why I have it up on my desk.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. When I started candidacy to become a pastor, back, I think at this point, it was in 2013 or something, so it's been some years. The fellow who was the leader of the candidacy committee at that time said to me, sometimes the best way to be a good Christian is to just not be a jerk. As you're talking,
I love it.
This reminds me of a little bit more of a thoughtful way about how to affect the quality of somebody's day. Don't be a jerk for sure, but also how do we go a little further than that too, right?
Yeah,
thank you so
right,
much.
that's right.
Who am I today as I walk into each passing moment, painted by the colors of each person that I meet?
Laura, what do you do to kind of address some of that busyness for folks who might be saying, this is so much right now?
Yeah, isn't that true? We all experience that sense of this is so much. And it can be good things, but it can still be so much. I know in my life, between, we have a family, I've been caring for parents with their health issues. There's the day-to-day work. So it all adds up, doesn't it? And sometimes when it becomes really a lot, I will sit back and remind myself that for today, it's day-to-day difficult, but big picture good. And that's
so good.
Often something I'll respond to when people are like, how are you doing? I'm like, day-to-day difficult, but it's big picture good. And that helps me through it a little bit when I remind myself of those big picture good things, like I have the presence of a loving God in my life. I have people I love who love me in my life, and I can ask them for help. I'm able to try to do good work in the day and make a little difference. So all these things, I'm trying to find the next good thing. So it helps me remember and get grounded in like this busyness will pass, but the big picture is good. It's like the little riffles on the ocean, but like the deep ocean is where I think we want to find our strength. The other thing too, when there's this busy factor, is back to just reminding about that gratitude piece and people who I love. I find inspiration. I try to remind myself of people who inspire me, and I mentioned my dad, my mom. Through breast cancer and dementia, she'll talk about how grateful she is for the love that surrounds her. And my grandma did that too. And so I seek inspiration from those people who remind me of those bigger, deeper things.
Laura, that's beautiful. Listen, girl, I love you. But, there's a but. Where are you getting all the energy? Where are you getting recharged? How are you able to give so much? Where do you find that?
Well, I'm sort of laughing inside because I'll be very honest and say I'm not feeling like I'm doing very good at it sometimes. So, right, we're just all being our authentic selves here. So, like the busy factor, I'm not always good at taking the pause to recharge. So, like these things I'm sharing on the podcast are often my aspirational self, right? But in truth, I do really try to think about that. And that recharge comes back from those values, the people that I care about, art and beauty in the world, things that I can look to and feel gratitude for, my children, my family, those all recharge me. And then I'll also share too that I think that being part of this community at Emmanuel Lutheran Church is really important for me too, because I am reminded of being part of a community. And I can come to a church service, and I may not make all of them, but I come to one and I feel more grounded. I listen to beautiful music. I appreciate that and feel at peace. And I love listening to sermons because honestly, I feel like often sermons can do a really good job at like seeking that big picture inspiration while acknowledging the total messy day-to-day realities. And so I think a good sermon does that.
Yeah.
Right? It acknowledges where we are in our messiness, and then it allows us to try to reach to that next good thing. And so I find a lot of, sometimes I'll come to a service and I didn't even know that was what I needed. So.
It's beautiful how a worship service can touch each one of us those ways. You talk about preaching as a new preacher, or listening to sermons as a new preacher. It's one of the most terrifying moments of my week.
I can imagine. Yeah.
You know, I have had some doozies here at Emmanuel, and when I come down, I always think to myself, oh boy, that was a doozy. Then I get to the back, and it's amazing to me how many people walk by and they say, that really meant something to me. I think it's a beautiful thing that God can take the messiness of our lives, the things that we are most self-conscious about or feel the worst about, and can turn that around into a way that really affects people, other people, in just the most generous of ways.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
Oh, gosh.
Well, thanks for putting yourself out there when you do that.
Yeah.
You know, my dad being a pastor would, go about that. So I saw him sort of preparing to give his sermons, and I tell you though, I always loved listening to him. And he really just had an incredible way of loving people and giving good word in his sermons. And another thing that stands out is he would have us learn just a couple. He said it's good to have just a couple Bible verses in your back pocket in life, and to just keep those for when you need them. And it's short and sweet, so you wouldn't have to remember too much. And the two that stick out for me is he would regularly would say, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. And then a second one, which seemed to bookend it, which was rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. And what I love about that, when I was thinking about this the other day, it's that scope of life. You know, the hardest parts and the most joyous parts was this idea that we have God's love with us in all of those things. And I think that was something that stood out for me in some of those things that he shared with me.
I love that. Yeah. I've often heard Jesus wept as the shortest, quoted as the shortest verse in the Bible. And I often respond back, if you say it in Greek, rejoice always is the shortest.
Oh, wow.
I think it's beautiful how those two things kind of bookend, right? Joys and concerns, challenges and wins, they're all part of the same coin, and it's all part of the same life.
That's great. I just learned a new thing here. See, we learn something new every day.
It's faith formation, folks. It's happening right here. Hey, Laura, thank you so much for this. This was really terrific. I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you for asking me. What an honor.
Absolutely. There you have it, folks. It's not just about what you do, but who you are in Christ. We are called, gifted, and given courage to serve God and our neighbors right where we are with just what we have. And that service, offered with a grateful heart, is a form of worship all on its own. To all our friends out there in podcast land, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you'll join us again next week. May your path be clear, your steps be steady, and your journey blessed. May good fortune follow you, and may you feel God's presence with you every step of the way until we meet again.
Sacred and Messy is recorded in front of a live studio audience of me, Josh Wareheim-Gagel. Our theme song is Who Am I Today by Dale Fierke. Additional support is provided by Brian Bullock and Dale Fierke.